Welcome to the Selling from the Heart podcast on the From the Heart Business Network. You've joined a global movement of sales professionals who are dedicated to being authentic and building trust. We call it Selling from the Heart. Together, we're on a mission to bring sincerity and substance to the sales profession we all love. Get ready to be inspired and equipped as we join our hosts, Larry Levine and Darrell Amy.
If you're a high-performing salesperson, you know your time is your most valuable asset. So why waste it on tasks that someone else could handle even better? That's where our friends at Work Better Now come in.
Work Better Now virtual assistants are specially trained to help sales professionals like you fully leverage your time. Imagine offloading administrative work, calendar management, data entry, and follow-ups so you can focus on what you do best, building relationships and closing deals.
With a dedicated assistant at your side, you'll have the bandwidth to grow your pipeline, strengthen client connections, and crush your sales goals.
It's simple. Free up your time, maximize your impact. Let Work Better Now help you work smarter, not harder. Your sales career deserves this game-changing advantage.
Visit workbetternow.com today to learn more and get started, because your time isn't just money, it's everything. Welcome back to the Selling from the Heart podcast. Your co-host, Darrell Amy, here today with Larry Levine. What's going on, Larry?
Hey, it's a great day here at Selling from the Heart. I'm looking forward to this conversation. One thing I just got to let everyone know, I'm jealous of the hairdo because you'll find out here in a second. We're in for a treat.
We've got our new friend, Max Porter, in the house. You're going to absolutely enjoy this conversation. Hey, it's summer, and we've told you all along, we're committed to keeping you focused and fired up during this summer, and all in the name of helping our clients and just keeping things moving in a great direction. And Larry, all through the summer and really all through the year, we get to hear from our friends, which is you, the listeners, out there in the Selling from the Heart community, and these conversations and connections that we're making, not just you and I with people in the community, but people in the community with each other. It just really is a special thing, this movement here at Selling from the Heart.
Yeah, I want to give a special shout out. You know this person, near and dear to me, and it's near and dear to Darrell. This person's been on our podcast before, and we can all agree we can all use more referrals. A special shout out to Mike Garrison. He's a great guy, wrote a great book that I encourage everyone to go out. Can I borrow your car? I actually wrote the forward, but if you want to really hone in on referrals this summer, check out Mike Garrison.
Absolutely. And if you need to borrow someone's car, well, you could borrow Mike's car, but read the book first.
Just make sure you bring it back with a full tank of gas.
That's right. Well, hey, our guest today is Max Porter. He is a seasoned business leader and operations strategist and the author of Sell for Christ's Sake, Biblical Principles for Sales and Business. Max is no stranger to the boardroom or to the battlefield of belief. With a career rooted in marketing, consulting, and executive operations, he's helped organizations scale by building cultures that care, systems that sustain, and teams that thrive. But here's what makes Max truly unique. He leads with a servant's heart. And in our post-trust world, that often prizes performance over purpose. Max stands out by aligning strategy with scripture and values with vision. His work challenges the status quo of business as usual, reminding us that profit and purpose aren't enemies, they're allies. And Max is here with us today. Max, welcome to Selling from the Heart. It's great to have you here.
It's an honor to be here. I'm a huge fan of both of you guys, and I'm simultaneously honored and a little terrified, only because the content previously has been so good, and you've set the bar so high, but I'll do my best.
It's all good. You're in a safe spot, Max. We're just grateful that you're hanging out with us.
Absolutely. And I'm excited as we get started, Max. You know the question that every guest on the Selling from the Heart podcast answers, and that is, what does it mean to you to sell from the heart?
I believe every heart is unique. And to sell from the heart means to fully understand your unique abilities and use them in the selling process, right? So some people are extroverts, their EQ level is through the roof and they just know how to connect with people. So that is selling from the heart for them, their authentic self. Some are much more analytical. So selling from the heart for them is, building out the ROI models and the pro formas and all that stuff. For me, it's creativity, right? So applying creativity to generating leads, negotiating, doing discovery on a sales cycle. So for me, selling from the heart is finding out what makes you, you, and then just doubling down on that during the sales cycle.
Oh, this is so good. So here's the question, Max. You ready? What makes Max Max?
Oh man, how much time do you have? I'm relatively new in my faith, but one thing I found when I came to my faith is it called me to be more honest with who I am. And I think a challenge we all have in sales is, especially when you're coming up, all these different people will be training you. You'll be reading all these different sales books and doing all these different sales trainings. And what everyone's really trying to do is help you learn to sell like them. And so oftentimes you'll come into a new sales role. You could be an SDR, you could be a BDR, or even a young account executive. And you're trying to close off who you are and accept who your leadership or who you look up to is. And that may work initially, but ultimately you're going to start hitting bumps in the road. You're going to start missing quota. You're going to start feeling a lot of friction. So for me, what makes me me is my creativity and how I'm able to apply that to all aspects of my life, right? So sales is obviously, that's my career. That's what I do. Whether I apply that to writing books, whether I apply that to being a good father to my children or a good husband to my wife, never letting myself fall into that box of, okay, I just task, because that's when I feel I'm not being my authentic self.
Well, I really want to applaud you for that, because I think in the world of sales, and I've shared this before on the podcast, but I remember my first sales job, they said, this is what you wear. And that role, Casual Friday, meant you could wear a white shirt with a tie instead of a blue shirt on Friday instead of white. I'm not kidding. Like it was, and this is what you say. And there was so much of the beginning of my sales career that was like, hey, if you want to work here, you this is what you're going to do. And this is what you're going to look like. And so I think it took me a while to untangle from that later on in different sales roles and being an entrepreneur. I'm curious about your journey and how you came to the conclusion of, I need to understand who I am and bring that to the table so I can be more fulfilled and more successful in my sales role. Well,
it's part of the reason I'm wearing the shirt, right? It's a reminder that Casual Friday all day. Be honest with who I am. It's a great question. I would say probably, so I've been doing sales, mostly software sales, for about 14 years. And I'd say, up until a couple of years ago, I would realize I was never able to perform consistently. I'd have my quarters where I was crushing it, and then I have my down quarters. But I realized whenever I was underperforming, it was always things I knew I shouldn't have done, but for whatever reason, I allowed the outside world, whatever the organization I'm working for, my boss, my colleagues, to influence how I was doing things. And so once I started taking a little bit more control, much more of an entrepreneurial approach, how I think it should be for an individual contributor. Whatever your territory is in sales, you need to treat that like your company, right? So if you're selling software and your territory is Texas, you are the CEO of that company in Texas, right? And you have to bring your own personal flair to it. And a lot of what Larry's written about in his books, it's if you're not selling your authentic self, the customer picks up on that. People are naturally really good at picking up when people are not being authentic. And if we're talking, in a post-trust world, how do you differentiate yourself? You have to do the work to figure out who you are, what's your superpower, and apply that to your profession. And I started doing that. I kind of naturally figured that out. And then, of course, I came across Larry's books, and I love to read. And I think the most impactful books that you read in your life depends so much on when you come across them. And Larry's was one of those. And so now I'm thinking, okay, what am I really good at? What do I enjoy during the sales process? And where do I feel like I'm making it up? And what I noticed is where I feel like I'm making it up was also where I was losing my customers.
Hey, I applaud you for a lot of this. And I've had a sneak peek because I actually have a copy of Max's book that I'm actually deep into reading right now. And what I really like about this is you are so transparent in your speak. You're so transparent in your struggles. You're so transparent in the wins, and you're also transparent in the losses. Walk us through what transparency means and why do you believe it's so important for anybody who has a role in sales?
In my opinion, it helps you not judge yourself, right? You can't, I think salespeople, we have this bad kind of perception in people's heads of kind of being egomaniacs and just running around and being really good at getting people to do what we want them to do. And the problem going down that road is that you're not able to assess your weaknesses, right? And we as salespeople all have them, whether it's how we communicate, whether it's our internal motivations. So for me, the transparency is honestly, I love telling war stories. I mean, we're all salespeople here, right? So you always have that story of that one deal that got away, or that one deal you won last minute, December 31st at 11:59 p.m., right? Just to get that deal in before the end of the year. So for me, as I practice the transparency, what I realized is everybody would relate to me more, and then that's how I would build trust with my customers. So, I'll get on a sales call and I'll look down, I realize I'm wearing two different types of socks. And then I'll tell the customer, they'll ask me like, hey, how's my day going? I'm like, well, I just woke up with two different socks on. Do you ever do that? And it's almost like this immediate icebreaker because they realize I'm not trying to pretend to be somebody I'm not so that I can just get my commission at the end of the day. I'm looking for a genuine connection to help you.
I love it. By the way, just a little programming note for people who are listening on audio. I just realized we're recording this on Friday, and now 30 years later, I'm still wearing blue shirts on Friday. So obviously got some work to do, Max. What authenticity in all of this, I think what's fascinating is you took a deep dive. Obviously, a huge part of your life is your faith. In your case, your Christian faith, and you looked into what are some things that I can draw from that to bring into the world of sales and into your sales profession. There's a beautiful authenticity about that. And I'm curious, as you put this together and you looked back into your faith, your relationship with Jesus, and you said, okay, well, what am I going to do to bridge that into the world of sales? Obviously, you have a lot of thoughts on this because you wrote an entire book about it. So hats off. But what are some of the things that stood out to you in terms of, hey, what can I bring into my role as a salesperson? And in your case, a salesperson of faith, it's wanting to be authentic in your interactions with people.
It's a great question. So as salespeople, we have ministry, right? We have our ministry that we're building. And even if you're not a salesperson of faith, you can call ministry any other term you want, but it's basically your administration of your abilities to the people in your life, right? And so for me, what I was struggling is I'm relatively new to my faith. I've only had a conscious relationship with Christ for a couple of years now. And I remember when I first started it, I had this almost aching anxiety, this friction. And I realized it was because I felt like I was a hypocrite. Because in my mind, and I think there are a lot of salespeople who feel this way, the Christian lifestyle, Christian principles, and the sales lifestyle, the sales principles are paradoxical. So you feel this drag in your heart, like I'm believing and saying one thing, but I'm doing something else with my life. And so this book was really a book that I needed at this point. I just couldn't find it. So I started writing it and I started doing the research, and there was a little bit of fear doing it because I'm like, well, what if I do my research and scripture tells me, yeah, salespeople, they're the worst on the planet. They're doomed to damnation and all those things. And and so I was like, okay, I hope that's not the case. And of course I go through and I discover in scripture that there is so much we can learn on how to be amazing salespeople. If you take Peter's speech at Pentecost, for example, that day they started with 120 Christians, and that was the time that right around the time Christ ascended to heaven. At the end of the day, they had baptized 3,000, right? So in one day, you convert from 120 to 3,000. And if you read it, and this is something I talk about in the book, you can actually very clearly make up the pattern of how Peter instilled that upon them. And it's something we try and touch, throughout the book.
Oh, I like this. And I want to continue this conversation because, I've been on this own journey myself over the last couple of years and in really trying to find out who I am, not only as a man and as a husband and so forth, but how does all this translate in to making me a better person spiritually and so forth. So if you can just walk us through, because you said you've only been a man of faith a couple of years, what was that triggering moment? Because you've been deep into sales, right? So you're a decade into sales, and then all of a sudden you had to have that light switch moment. What was it? What caused it to now that you're bringing this book to the forefront and carrying yourself like that in sales?
So I remember when I first got baptized, the challenge is when you spend your career in sales, it's kind of like you're a hammer and everything looks like a nail, right? So I start reading scripture, and I remember I got to, when God was talking to Moses about him being the chosen one to lead the Israelites out of Egypt, right? And when you read that passage, Moses was not on board. He didn't want to go. God had to convince him to do it. Moses was like, no, find somebody else. They're not even going to listen to me. I was a former prince. Like, why do you want to use me? I mean, he was really trying to get out of it. And if you look at the structure in which God convinces him to do this, the first thing does is God clearly states what the context is, what's the situation, right? My people are suffering, they're slaves, they're being beaten down, all these things. So he clearly communicates to Moses, okay, this is your reality, right? And then God paints a picture of the future. And he says, the future of the Israelites is a land filled with milk and honey, and I'm going to bless you, and I'm going to give you all this land so all the generations can grow free of slavery. And then God so specifically, and again, you can go to Genesis and read this, or Exodus, and he walks through, okay, this is how you're going to do it. You're going to go introduce yourself to these Israelites. You're going to say, I am who I am. And he walks them through, and then it's going to end with you ending up in Canaan. And I remember reading that passage and I was blown away. It's like, this is what the sales process is. You clearly understand where your customer's at now. You understand where they want to go. And then you give them the exact steps on how to get there. In the meantime, if they trust you, they'll know, okay, I believe Max is going to get me from where I'm at now to where I want to be in the future.
Oh, so good.
Very, very powerful. So I'm curious, what else did you discover? This is very, very interesting. I love the heart behind this. So, and how can I take this part that's so meaningful in my personal life and bring it into my profession, especially this profession we all love? So what else did you discover along this journey? Give us another sneak peek into some of the things that are in this book.
Yeah, I would say one of the things that really struck me, and so I've been in enterprise sales my entire career, right? So I define enterprise sales as there are several people in the sales process that you have to convince before funds get released to purchase the product, right? Typically very complex. Oftentimes, you come in with the decision maker, then you got to do all your research with all the people below them, then you report your findings to them. I mean, it's a very complicated process, right? And one of the things I was struggling with, and I imagine a lot of salespeople building their pipeline now do, is I'll get in touch with somebody who's not necessarily the decision maker, but somebody who is a fan of what I'm doing, and now they're responsible for selling it internally, right? So basically what I have to do is I have to train them to be my salesperson. It's a very difficult thing to do because I've been selling my product for however many years. I got the pitch down. I got all the documents. I know everything. They've seen a 30-minute demo. And now they got to go tell somebody, their boss, whoever it might be, hey, you want to spend, 6 figures on this product that I just discovered? It's really hard and unlikely that's going to work. So one of the things I found is I can support them with the right tools. I can make them my perfect salesperson. And one of those things is, in the book, we call it the parable principle. So part of the reason Christ's parables are so memorable is they all follow the same map, right? The same, okay, here's the story, here's the conflict, here's how you use the conflict to get to the core of what they actually care about. And so we created this framework in the book where it's called the parable principles. When you have your one person in the company that now is your lifeline to getting your pitch throughout the organization, here's your step. You build the story, you build the conflict, you build probably the one reason that everybody can agree they should buy. You build up the human element, right? You guys talk a lot about building up the emotion behind a sale, right? So when you're getting into a sale, you can give them all the reasons in the world that's better for them, but they need to feel excited about it. And so that was another thing I realized. If you look at Christ's parables, they all follow that format: story, core, friction, and then they get into kind of the core teaching principle of the parable. And then there's always that human element. And so if you can break that down properly, they'll do the selling for you. You just kind of sit back and wait for the economic buyer to say, okay, where do I send the money? Type of thing.
I love this. So this just begs the question. What have you noticed that's been different over the last couple of years? What have you noticed that's been different with Max and how you're connecting and how you're relating to all the different key decision makers and influencers out there? So over the last couple of years, as you're bringing this to life, what have you noticed that's different?
Yeah, it's a great question. I would say that there's a couple of things. Number one, we all have our individual moral principles, right? And that's part of selling from the heart, is knowing who you are, what your principles are. And one of the first things I learned as a salesperson is I wasn't picking organizations to work for that shared those same principles. And when you do that, there's always friction, right? So I'll give you an example of how that comes up. I'm somebody who I don't push as much as I teach. One of my kind of God-given abilities is much more towards teaching versus convincing. So when I come into a complex sale and I give them all the data, I give them all the reasons, I connected with them personally, I did all these things, and they come back to me and they say, Max, I appreciate your time. We're not there yet. We can't do it right now, but thank you. And then they go away. I've been a part of organizations where I get reprimanded for that. And I'm like, no, you didn't sell hard enough. You got to call them back. You got to like really push it. And I'm not that type of person. And so it comes a lot down to type of company you're working for, industry you're in, the product you're selling, how valuable is the product you're selling. So many sales training and sales books out there, they try to teach you how to be a better salesperson, but they don't ask the foundational question, are you at the right company and are you selling the right product? That's 50% of the battle. I mean, if you're selling something that doesn't have any value, you could be the best salesperson in the world. You're probably selling something that isn't worth your customers' money, and that builds up its own friction and difficulties that you have to deal with. So if anything's changed for me, it's been trusting in my intuition, trusting when God speaks to me, push here, pull back here, right? And another key part of having these foundational principles is you can trust yourself when it's time to push, right? Customers don't always know what's best for them. But if you've done the research and you feel it and you know it and you've built that rapport, you can come in and say, hey, Larry, listen, I understand where you're coming from. And forgive me for pushing. It's not out of my interest. It's because I truly believe this can help you. The question is, when I tell Larry that, does he believe me? Does he think Max is really in this for me? Or is he just, commission breath coming through the computer? So the book is for salespeople who are trying to bring these two worlds together, right? They have their faith, they have their moral principles, but they feel professionally that they're doing something different than what they believe. And this book was just a research project into how do we bring those two together.
Fantastic. So cool, Max. So I'm curious, every author has got one or two parts of the book you just like really, really enjoy. And what's one of your favorite parts of this book as we wrap up that you haven't been able to talk about yet on the show?
I would say that there's a section about discovery, right? So discovery probably gets the most attention. The discovery phase of a sale probably gets the most attention out of all sales trainings, all sales leaders that you can imagine. And it's a really kind of tough nut to crack, I would say. But that is the one I'm most proud of in what I wrote, because I believe it is the firmest in what I wrote, right? Because it's essentially the foundation. We talk about lead generation in the book. We talked about negotiating deals. How do you present your solution? But it all is dependent on how well can you know the reality of your customer? Because oftentimes, if you do it right, you'll end up knowing it better than them, because people don't want to think about problems, right? So they probably just put it to the back of their mind. No, I have a solution for it. It might not work well, but in their mind, they check that box. And so I think that the art of discovery is where you do everything. It's where you find out, can I provide value? It's where you connect with them on a personal level. And it determines your success as a salesperson. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've gone through the discovery process only to figure out this isn't worth it, right? We can help them maybe in some certain ways, but I can't justify charging them X for this. And I'll come up and I'll tell them that. And then we go our separate ways. And, now we're at the end of Q4 and I'm 10% away from quota. And I get a call from that person I did discovery with at the beginning of the year, like, hey, Max, we're ready to go. Just send me a PO and let's get it done. That's happened enough in my career. I'm like, okay, I really got to take this seriously, focusing on the connection versus, just checking the boxes. How do you like your current solution? What would you do different? All those kind of things.
Oh, hey, I just got to ask this before we wrap up, just because I inquiring minds want to know. So somebody's out there who's watching this podcast or is listening to it and goes, I'm going to go out and get Max's book. They read Max's book. They leave a review on Amazon. What do you hope that review states?
I hope it states, this book helped me reconcile my profession with my faith in a way that I'm now financially stable and I live in peace every day.
I love it. I love it. Max, I really appreciate the heart behind what you're doing here. I think this is really, really amazing. I know our listeners asking the question, and I'm just going to ask it to you. How do we get more Max Porter in our lives?
Yeah, so I typically do everything through Instagram. So just Max Porter Instagram, and then Sell for Christ's Sake is on Amazon. So if you're interested in learning more about it, just go get yourself a copy.
Awesome. Max, thank you so much for hanging out with us today. This has been a fantastic conversation. I really appreciate your heart. And thank you for being a Selling from the Heart champion. This has been amazing.
Thank you, guys. It was a pleasure being here.
Same here.
Awesome. What a fascinating conversation. And
so
I love
good.
So many great things out of that. But being able to have that, I love the journey that Max has gone on to say, hey, I want to bring my authentic self to my profession of sales, this profession we all love, and how he's gone on that journey of taking his newfound faith and bringing those together and recognizing there's actually a lot you can learn and apply along the way. I think it's a really, really beautiful picture here.
Absolutely. And just our whole conversation just really validates why would you do the inner work? Those that are willing to do the inner work, watch what starts happening to all the outer layers of success that you can have. And what I really like about this conversation is, I don't know if you keyed into it, but I did, is I was watching Max's eyes light up when he was talking about the transformation that he's gone through in his career. I ask everyone to do the same. If you're willing to look inside of who you are, trust it. Trust your gut on this. Watch what happens to that gleam and that sparkle in your eye as you take that out and start having conversations with your clients and your future clients.
Absolutely. Makes a huge, huge difference. Well, I want to say thank you to everybody who is sharing Selling from the Heart. The audience continues to grow all over the world with people that are raising their hand when they like or subscribe, saying, hey, I want more of this. I've been looking for a community of people who are genuine, authentic, building trust, all the attributes of Selling from the Heart. We love to hear from you. So please, in addition to subscribing to the show, in addition to leaving reviews, which is so helpful as we build this movement, we'd love to connect with you personally. And LinkedIn is usually the best place to do that. So reach out to us, grab Max's resources. You'll find the links in the show notes. And Larry, we've got good stuff coming out the rest of this season. So stick around. Join us next week. We've got some phenomenal things, and we're going to keep you focused and fired up this summer.
Absolutely. And you got to stay tuned, because we got some guests coming on this podcast over the summer that's going to rock your world.
Absolutely. True stories. So stay tuned. Till next time, keep being genuine, keep being authentic, keep building trust, discover your authentic self and bring it to what you do. And most of all,
Sell from the heart.